The champagne glass slipped from my trembling hand and shattered across the ballroom floor. I froze. Right in front of the entire board of directors, my husband's arm was draped around another woman, his assistant, the one I had always trusted to stay by my side. Her lipstick smeared across his cheek like a brand of ownership. I was 7 months pregnant, my dress straining against my swollen belly, yet he looked at me as if I were the embarrassment in the room. "Why are you even here?" he spat, loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice carried across the chandeliers and golden tables. The whispers started instantly. Executives turned away, pretending not to stare, but I could feel their eyes burning into my skin. My husband, Ethan, stepped closer, his breath reeking of whiskey. His mistress clung to him like a trophy. "Don't make a scene," she hissed, smirking at me. "It's unbecoming, especially in your condition." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but before a word escaped, his hand cracked across my cheek. The sound silenced the ballroom. I staggered back, clutching my face. My baby kicked violently inside me, as if sensing my terror. Gasps, murmurs. A few phones lifted, recording. I wished the ground would open and swallow me whole. But worse than the pain was the humiliation. Watching them all laugh silently, their smirks sharp as knives. My life, my marriage, my dignity, all shattered in one strike. And then I noticed something strange. Among the crowd, a man I had never seen before didn't look away. He wasn't mocking me. He was watching Ethan with eyes that burned like cold steel. And for the briefest second, I thought he nodded, as if he knew something about me that even I didn't. I stumbled out of the ballroom, clutching my belly, my tears mixing with the taste of blood where my lip had split. My whole body trembled, my breath shallow. Behind me I heard Ethan's mistress giggle. "Don't stress, honey. Men need real women, not liabilities." Her voice followed me like poison. I collapsed against the marble wall of the lobby, sobbing, the world spinning around me. My baby kicked again, hard, as if reminding me I wasn't allowed to fall apart. Not now. And then, something odd. The same man from the ballroom stepped out of the shadows, tall, impeccably dressed. His gaze pinned me like he had been waiting. He bent down, his voice low but firm. "You don't deserve this. And believe me, Mrs. Carter, you have no idea who your husband really is." I froze, the words cutting through my fog. How do you know my name?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He simply slipped a small black envelope into my trembling hand and walked away, his stride calm, controlled, like he owned the world. I looked down at the envelope, my tears blurring the edges. Inside, I felt something solid. A photo, maybe, evidence. But my hands shook too violently to open it. All I knew was this. The night I thought I had lost everything was only the beginning. And somehow, that stranger had just lit the first spark of a storm I wasn't ready to face. I was 32 when my world collapsed. My name is Isabella Carter, and until that night, I thought I had built the perfect life. Daughter of a school teacher and a mechanic, I grew up in a small town where money was scarce but love was plenty. My parents worked tirelessly, and they raised me to believe in loyalty, in sacrifice, in building a future with someone you trusted. So when I met Ethan Carter, a charming, ambitious entrepreneur with dreams bigger than anyone I'd ever known, I thought I had found the partner my parents had prayed for me. He swept me into a life I had never imagined. Penthouse apartments, glittering galas, expensive cars, and a company everyone admired. He made me believe we were building an empire together. I quit my modest job as a teacher, traded lesson plans for investor meetings, and poured everything I had into supporting his vision. And when I found out I was pregnant, I thought it was the final piece of our happiness, a family to share the empire we had fought for. But I was wrong, because the Ethan who once held my hand through sleepless nights at the office had changed. Somewhere along the way, success devoured him. He became colder, crueler, less patient. The man who once whispered that I was his lucky charm now sneered at my swollen ankles, my changing body, my quiet worries. He reminded me constantly that I owed him everything, and perhaps in some ways he was right. Without him, I wouldn't be living in the marble halls I walked every day. Without him, I would still be teaching second graders, clipping coupons, and dreaming small. But deep down, I knew I had traded more than my career. I had traded my independence. Still, I held on. Because of the baby. That was my weakness. I couldn't imagine raising my child alone. I couldn't bear the thought of them growing up in a broken home like so many of my students had. I told myself Ethan was just stressed, that it was just a phase, that love could survive anything if you fought hard enough. But the slap in that ballroom proved me wrong. When I finally gathered the courage to open the black envelope the stranger had given me, my world shifted again. Inside was a single photograph. Ethan, sitting across from a man I didn't recognize, cash on the table between them. A briefcase slightly open, stacks of bills visible. On the back of the photo, written in sharp black ink, was one sentence: "Your husband is not who he says he is." My stomach churned, my throat tightened. Who was that man in the photo? What was Ethan doing with that much cash? And why would a stranger care enough to warn me? I pressed a hand to my belly, whispering to my unborn child, "I don't know what's happening, baby, but I promise you I'll find out." For the first time in months, instead of feeling broken, I felt a spark of something else. Fear. Yes, but also defiance. Maybe I wasn't as powerless as Ethan thought. Maybe this was just the beginning of my story. The days after the gala felt like walking through a storm with no umbrella. Ethan barely came home. When he did, he reeked of alcohol and perfume. His excuses grew shorter, his temper sharper. And I, too exhausted from pregnancy, too afraid of confrontation, kept my silence. But inside, my mind was anything but quiet. That photograph haunted me. Every night I pulled it from the drawer, staring at Ethan's face, the stacks of cash, the stranger across from him. Who was that man? What was Ethan hiding from me? The walls of our penthouse felt colder, emptier. Every corner echoed with secrets. I needed answers. One afternoon, I forced myself out. My swollen ankles ached as I walked into Café Amour, a quiet corner cafe Ethan never bothered with. I chose it because it felt safe, ordinary, like the life I once had. But as I settled into a seat with my decaf latte, I realized I wasn't alone. Across the cafe, at a corner table, sat the same man from the gala, the one who had slipped me the envelope. He looked completely out of place among the chipped mugs and worn-out booths. Tailored suit, polished shoes, a presence that drew every eye without effort. Our gazes met. He didn't look away. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Then, almost against my will, I rose and walked toward him. "Why are you following me?" My voice cracked, more fragile than I wanted. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." "I don't even know your name," I said, clutching my belly, protective. He leaned back, calm, confident. Alexander Knight. The name stirred something. I had seen it before, in headlines. Billionaire investor, ruthless dealmaker. A man people whispered about but rarely saw. "And why would a man like you care about me?" I asked. His eyes flicked to my stomach, then back to mine. "Because you and your child are in danger. Ethan isn't just unfaithful. He's involved with people who would destroy anyone in their way." My chest tightened. "You don't know my husband." "I know more than you think," he interrupted, pulling out a file from his briefcase. "And you need to decide if you want the truth." He slid it across the table. The edges brushed my fingers. I hesitated. My whole body screamed to walk away. But curiosity, and something deeper, maybe desperation, kept me rooted. Inside the file were documents, names, numbers, a list of wire transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts. At the bottom of the stack, one name circled in red: Vincent Marino. I didn't know who he was, but from the way Alexander's jaw tightened, I could tell it wasn't someone good. What does this mean?" I whispered. Alexander's voice was steady. "It means your husband isn't just a liar. He's laundering money for the Marino crime family." The cafe around me blurred. My breath caught, shallow and fast. Ethan, my husband, the father of my child, a criminal. I stumbled out of the cafe, clutching the file like it might burn me. My heart raced. My baby shifted uncomfortably inside me, as if sensing my panic. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage was unraveling. And yet one truth pulsed louder than the fear. If Alexander was right, Ethan wasn't just cruel, he was dangerous, and staying silent could cost me everything, including my child. I waited for Ethan that night, the file hidden beneath a blanket in the nursery we had only just painted. Soft yellows, little stars across the wall. I had chosen them because I wanted our baby to feel safe, but the room already felt like a lie. He came home at midnight, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the picture frames. His tie hung loose, his shirt untucked, his eyes glassy with liquor. And still, he carried himself like a king. I swallowed hard. "Where were you?" His laugh was bitter. Since when do you care? I pressed a hand to my belly. Because I'm carrying your child, Ethan. Because I can't keep pretending everything is fine when... Don't start. He cut me off, throwing his jacket on the couch. You think just because you're pregnant, the world has to revolve around you? I have bigger things to handle than your hormones. His words sliced me, but I held steady. I saw you, at the gala, with her, and I know about the money. For the first time, his face stilled. The room shifted, air heavy as stone. He stepped closer, his shadow long across the nursery floor. What did you say? My heart pounded, but I forced myself to meet his eyes. I know you're hiding something. I won't stay silent forever. His hand shot out, gripping my chin so hard I winced. His breath was hot, sour with whiskey. Listen to me, Isabella. You have no idea what you're talking about. And if you're smart, you'll shut that pretty mouth before you ruin us both. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't look away. Us, or you? For a moment I thought he might strike me again. His hand hovered, trembling with rage, but instead he released me with a shove that set me stumbling against the crib. He sneered, voice low and venomous. Don't forget. You have nothing without me. No money, no power, no future. You'd crawl back to your little teacher's salary and watch our child starve. Is that what you want? The words cut deeper than any slap, because he was right. I had given up everything. My career, my independence, my safety net. I had nothing but him, and this child, and he knew it. He thrived on it. As he stormed into the bedroom, I sank to the floor, shaking. The baby kicked violently inside me, my body trembling with fear and rage. But amid the tears, I noticed something. His phone. He had dropped it carelessly on the arm of the couch, and the screen was still lit. A message glowed across it. Meeting tomorrow. Vincent wants confirmation. No mistakes this time. Vincent. The same name circled in red on Alexander's file. My hands shook as I read it. The proof was right there, in my own home. Ethan wasn't just betraying me as a husband. He was betraying me as a father, as a protector. He was dragging our child into danger before they even took their first breath. And for the first time I realized Ethan wasn't just my mistake. He was my enemy. The charity luncheon was supposed to be mine. Every year I organized the event, raising money for children's education, honoring my mother's work as a teacher. For once, the spotlight was meant to shine on me, not on Ethan. I had worked for weeks despite swollen feet and aching back. I wanted to prove I was more than just Ethan Carter's pregnant wife. But when I arrived at the hotel ballroom, dressed in a soft blue gown that stretched over my belly, I realized too late. It had never been about me. The banners, the stage, the speeches, they were all branded with Ethan's company. His name, his logo, his face plastered everywhere. I felt invisible. And then came the knife to my chest. Halfway through the event, as guests clapped and the cameras rolled, Ethan walked on stage, not alone but with her. The same woman from the gala, his assistant, his mistress. She was radiant, her dress tight and gleaming, her hand resting proudly on his arm like she owned him. And Ethan, he didn't hide it this time. He introduced her as the future of his company. The audience clapped, confused but eager to follow his lead. I sat frozen at the front table, heat crawling up my neck, my pulse racing. My baby shifted, restless, as if sensing my shame. Then it got worse. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan announced, his smile wolfish, I'd like to share personal news. I'm going to be a father. My heart stopped. He gestured, not to me, to her. The room erupted in gasps, applause, whispers. Cameras flashed. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. My hands gripped the tablecloth, knuckles white. He was lying, brazenly, publicly, denying my child while the whole city watched. I tried to stand, to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. No one looked at me. No one cared. They only saw him, the successful CEO, the proud father-to-be. Tears blurred my vision. Shame burned my skin. But then I noticed something. Across the room, in the back, Alexander stood watching. His face unreadable. His eyes locked on me. I shook my head, mouthing words only he could see. Help me. And though he didn't move, I swore I saw the faintest nod. I stumbled out before the luncheon ended, unable to take another minute. The paparazzi swarmed outside, shouting Ethan's name, not mine. One of them turned their lens on me, snapping shots of my tear-streaked face, my swollen belly. Hey, isn't that his wife? Someone whispered. The flashbulbs stung my eyes, but worse was the laughter that followed. Because in that moment, to the world, I was nobody. Just a pathetic, discarded wife, replaced before I had even given birth. I fled into the street, clutching my belly, whispering to my child, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." But as the city lights blurred around me, I realized something sharp, something dangerous had taken root inside me. It wasn't just sorrow anymore, it was rage. I didn't remember how I got home after the luncheon. One moment I was drowning in camera flashes, the next I was curled on the nursery floor, clutching my belly as sobs tore through me. The crib loomed above like a cruel joke, Ethan's words echoing in my head, his mistress's smug smile etched into my brain. For 3 days I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My reflection in the mirror was a stranger, skin pale, cheeks hollow, eyes swollen from tears. My body felt heavy, but empty at the same time. Every kick from my child was a reminder I had to keep going. But how could I, when the man I married had erased me from existence? The whispers spread fast. Articles online called Ethan's mistress his beloved partner. Headlines praised him for embracing fatherhood. Social media mocked me, strangers posting pictures of me leaving the luncheon, disheveled and broken. Poor wife, she let herself go. No wonder he found someone else. Look at her, pathetic. I stopped checking my phone. Every word carved deeper into me. My parents called begging me to come home, but I couldn't bear to face them, couldn't stand the shame in their eyes. I had told them I'd found a man worthy of their daughter. And now, what was left of that promise? I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Ethan come and go like I was invisible. Sometimes I heard his laughter through the phone, soft murmurs that weren't meant for me. Once I heard him on the balcony telling someone, "She's nothing, she'll keep quiet, she always does." And the worst part? He wasn't wrong, because I had no strength left to fight. Until one night, when the pain became more than emotional, a sharp cramp twisted through me, so sudden I gasped. Then another. My belly tightened, hard as stone. No, not now, I whispered, clutching the sheets, panic flooding me. I stumbled to the bathroom, breath ragged, tears blinding me. In the mirror, I saw it. Blood, faint but real, staining the fabric of my dress. Terror ripped through me. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling, and dialed Ethan. He didn't answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. Sobbing, I whispered to the baby, "Please hold on. Please stay with me." I collapsed onto the cold tiles, clutching my belly, my body racked with fear. That was the lowest moment of my life. Alone, bleeding, abandoned by the man who had sworn to protect me. But even in that darkness, as my vision blurred and my strength drained, a truth pierced through. If I survived this night, I could never allow Ethan to own me again. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. Machines beeped softly, a nurse adjusting my IV. "You and the baby are stable," she said gently. "But you need rest. No stress. Do you understand?" Tears slid down my temples as I nodded weakly. Ethan never came. Not a call, not a message, but someone else had. On the bedside table sat a single white card, no flowers, no note, just a name embossed in gold, Alexander Knight. And for the first time in days, a spark of something unfamiliar stirred inside me. Not hope, not yet, but maybe strength. The first morning I woke up in the hospital without tubes or machines, I felt like a ghost. My body was weak, my face pale, but my mind, it refused to rest. Ethan hadn't come. Not once. No flowers, no call, not even a text. The man who had sworn vows before God, who had promised to protect me in sickness and in health, had abandoned me at the edge of death. But Alexander Knight hadn't. His card lay on my bedside table, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I picked it up, running my thumb over the gold letters, debating. I had nothing left to lose, so I called. He arrived within the hour. No entourage, no cameras, just him. Tall, composed, his presence commanding the entire sterile room. "You should be resting," he said quietly, his gaze sweeping over my frail frame. "And you," I whispered hoarsely, "shouldn't care." A faint smile touched his lips. "Maybe I shouldn't, but I do." I stared at him, confusion swirling with exhaustion. "Why? Why help me?" He sat beside my bed, folding his hands. "Because I know what it's like to be betrayed. And because Ethan Carter is not just hurting you, he's crossing people who won't hesitate to destroy you and your child in the process." I swallowed hard. "You said his name?" "Vincent Marino." Alexander nodded, his expression grim. "The Marinos are not businessmen, they're predators. Ethan is laundering money for them, and when men like that decide someone is a liability, they don't issue warnings." My chest tightened. "Are you saying they'll come for me?" His eyes locked on mine, steady but unflinching. If Ethan loses control, yes. Silence stretched between us. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then he leaned closer, voice low, measured. Ethan isn't just cheating you, Isabella. He's planning to cut you out completely. Legally, financially. He's already filed to remove your name from the company. And he's preparing custody papers. The words hit like knives. My breath caught. No, he wouldn't. Alexander slid a folder onto my lap. Inside, court documents, draft agreements, even emails between Ethan and his lawyers. All signed, all real. I gripped the pages, my hands trembling. Ethan wasn't just erasing me from his life, he was erasing me from my child's. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world tilted around me. And then softly, Alexander said, "You don't have to fight this alone." I looked at him, at the man who should have been a stranger, but felt like the only lifeline I had left. "Why me?" I whispered. His eyes softened, just enough to let something human slip through his steel. Because sometimes, the most dangerous people underestimate the quiet ones, and Ethan has no idea who he's about to lose. A shiver ran through me, not fear, but something sharper. For the first time, I saw a path forward. Ethan wanted me erased, but I wasn't going anywhere. I left the hospital 2 days later with a fragile body, but a mind sharper than it had been in months. The papers Alexander had given me burned in my purse like fire. Every time I touched them, I felt the weight of Ethan's betrayal. But Alexander wasn't done. He called me the next evening, asking me to meet him. Not at a restaurant, not at an office, but at a quiet townhouse on the edge of the city. The place was understated, nothing like the glass towers he was known for. When I arrived, he opened the door himself. No assistants, no guards. Inside, I saw walls lined with files, photographs, and maps pinned with red string. It wasn't just about Ethan. It was an investigation. "Sit," Alexander said, motioning toward a chair at the center table. My pulse quickened as I scanned the photos. Ethan, shaking hands with men I didn't recognize. Bank statements, hidden accounts. And then, one picture stopped me cold. It was Ethan again, but not alone. Standing beside him was the man from the photo in the black envelope. Vincent Marino. I swallowed. "So it's true. He's with them." Alexander nodded. "And it's worse than you think." He handed me another folder. Inside was a ledger, transactions between Ethan's company and shell corporations tied to the Marinos. But at the bottom, circled in red, was something I hadn't expected. My name. Confused, I flipped through. Wire transfers in my name. Accounts opened under my social security number. Documents stamped with my supposed signature. My blood ran cold. "What is this?" I whispered. Alexander's voice was calm, but there was steel in his eyes. "Ethan isn't just cutting you out, Isabella. He's setting you up. If the feds move in, you'll be the one who takes the fall for laundering their money." The room spun. My knees buckled, and I clutched the table for balance. No, he wouldn't, he couldn't. But deep down, I knew he could. Ethan had already erased me in public, denied my child, filed legal papers. Why wouldn't he bury me completely if it protected him? Tears blurred my vision, but fury blazed hotter. He's using me as his shield. Alexander's jaw tightened. "Yes, and when the time comes, he'll let you burn. But I won't let that happen." Silence thickened between us. I forced myself to meet his gaze. "Why?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why risk yourself for me?" For the first time, his expression cracked, just slightly. "Because Ethan Carter ruined someone I loved once, my sister." The words hit me like a blow. He didn't look away as he continued. "She trusted him. He stole from her, betrayed her, left her broken. She didn't survive it. And I swore that one day he would pay. I thought I would bring him down myself. But now I see he's already made his biggest mistake." He leaned forward, eyes burning into mine. "He underestimated you." My breath caught. I had been a ghost in my own marriage, a shadow at Ethan's side. But now, for the first time, someone was telling me I wasn't weak, that I was the very weapon Ethan could never see coming. I pressed a hand to my belly, feeling my baby stir. And I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for both of us. I used to think strength was something you were born with, that some people were fighters and others were meant to be protected. But after Ethan tried to erase me, after I held those papers that proved he wanted me to take the fall for his sins, I understood something new. Strength wasn't given. It was claimed. I began quietly, carefully. First, I called my parents. I hadn't spoken to them since the scandal broke, too ashamed to face their disappointment. But when my mother's trembling voice answered, all I heard was love. Sweetheart, come home. Her words cracked me open. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to sob, not from despair, but from relief. I told them I couldn't, not yet, that it wasn't just about a broken marriage, but about survival. I couldn't explain everything, but I promised I'll fight for myself, for the baby. And for once, I believed it. Alexander became my shadow. He arranged discreet lawyers, investigators, doctors. He coached me, showing me how to build a case, how to protect myself. He warned me not to confront Ethan until the time was right. You only get one chance to cut out rot, he said. When you strike, it must be final. Meanwhile, I transformed. I ate again. I walked, even when my ankles ached. I forced myself to breathe deeply, to find strength in the child I carried. And slowly, my reflection changed. Gone was the broken, hollow woman Ethan had left to wither. In her place stood someone harder, sharper, with fire in her eyes. I bought myself a new wardrobe, not glamorous, not for Ethan, but for me. Clothes that fit my pregnant body proudly, showing I was not ashamed. I painted my nails, cut my hair shorter, looked in the mirror and whispered, "You are not invisible." Every night, I read the file Alexander gave me, studying Ethan's crimes, memorizing every name, every transfer, every lie. I wasn't just a discarded wife anymore. I was a witness. I was evidence. I was a weapon. The first test came sooner than I expected. Ethan showed up at the hospital during one of my checkups. Not to see me, but to charm the press waiting outside. He smiled, lied about our happy family, pretended he was a devoted husband. When he walked into the room expecting me to shrink, I didn't. I sat tall, one hand on my belly, the other on the folder of evidence I now carried everywhere. He smirked. "Still clinging on, Isabella? You should have learned by now. I don't lose." For the first time, I smiled back. Not sweetly, not sadly, but with steel. "You're right," I said softly. "You don't lose, because you haven't played against me yet." His smirk faltered. Just for a moment. But I saw it, the flicker of doubt. And in that instant, I knew. I was no longer his victim. I was his reckoning. The night of Ethan's grand investor gala arrived, a glittering event he had spent months preparing. It was supposed to be his crowning moment, where he would unveil a new partnership and prove his empire was untouchable. But this time, I wasn't walking in as his wife. I was walking in as his downfall. Alexander had prepared everything. The lawyers, the agents, the evidence, all waiting for the right moment. When I stepped into the ballroom, heads turned. I was 7.5 months pregnant, draped in a sleek black dress that hugged my belly with pride. No longer invisible, no longer ashamed, gasps rippled through the crowd. For weeks they had believed Ethan's lies, that his mistress carried his child, that I was nothing but a discarded shadow. But I stood before them radiant, unbroken. Ethan's face drained of color when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, storming toward me. I met his rage with calm, taking back my voice. He tried to drag me away from the cameras, but I slipped from his grip and walked straight onto the stage. The microphone screeched as I lifted it, the room silencing under the weight of my words. "My name is Isabella Carter. I am Ethan's wife, and I am carrying his child." Whispers exploded through the hall. Cameras turned, flashing. Ethan froze, his mistress pale beside him. But I wasn't finished. Tonight, Ethan wanted to celebrate his empire, but what he doesn't want you to know, I held up a folder, is that this empire is built on lies, blood money, and betrayal. I handed the folder to a man in the front row, an FBI agent Alexander had arranged. The room erupted. Flashes, gasps, chaos. Ethan lunged for me, his face twisted in fury. "You stupid." But before his hand reached me, Alexander was there, stepping between us, his voice cold steel. "Touch her again, and you won't live to regret it." At that moment, agents swarmed. Ethan was seized, his mistress screaming as they dragged him off stage. The audience gawked as the once celebrated CEO fought like a trapped animal, shouting lies, denials, anything to save himself. But it was too late. The evidence was airtight. The man who had humiliated me, erased me, and tried to destroy me was finally stripped bare, his crimes laid before the world. When the chaos settled, I stood on that stage, tears slipping down my cheeks. Not of sorrow, not of shame, but of release. I looked at Alexander, who watched me with quiet pride, and whispered into the microphone, "My child will never grow up in fear. Not of him, not of anyone." The crowd erupted into applause, not for Ethan, not for his empire, but for me. Weeks later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. I named him Matthew, after my father. I held him close, whispering, "You will never know the chains I wore, you will only know freedom." Ethan was sentenced to decades in prison. His mistress faded into obscurity, abandoned by the same press that once worshipped her. The Marino family scattered under federal investigation, and me, I rebuilt. Not with Ethan's stolen money, but with strength I had carved from my own pain. Alexander stayed by my side, not as a savior, but as an ally, a friend, and slowly, something more. His vengeance had been mine, but together we found healing in survival. One night, as Matthew slept in my arms, Alexander said softly, "He thought he owned you. But you were never his to own. You were always your own." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. 6 months after Ethan's arrest, the world felt different. Quieter, lighter. My mornings no longer began with dread. They began with Matthew's laughter, soft, bubbling sounds that reminded me of everything I had fought for. His tiny hands gripped mine like an anchor, pulling me back into life every time the shadows of the past tried to creep in. But healing wasn't instant. Some nights I still woke up sweating, hearing the echo of Ethan's slap, his venomous words. Some days, shame tried to creep in when I saw gossip columns that replayed the old footage of my humiliation. The difference now was simple. I wasn't alone anymore. Alexander never pushed. He didn't force himself into my life like a savior. Instead, he stood at the edges, steady and patient, waiting until I was ready. Sometimes, he joined me on quiet walks with Matthew's stroller, shielding us from the curious eyes of strangers. Sometimes, he sat in my kitchen, sleeves rolled up, feeding Matthew with surprising tenderness. And sometimes, when silence stretched between us, I caught glimpses of his own scars, the loss of his sister, the years of rage he carried. One evening, as we watched the sunset from my porch, he spoke softly. "You rebuilt yourself from nothing, Isabella. Stronger than before. Do you see that?" I nodded, though tears stung my eyes. "I'm not who I was." His gaze held mine. "No, you're more." For the first time, I didn't flinch from the thought of a future, one that wasn't built on lies, one that didn't demand I erase myself for someone else's ego. The world, too, had shifted. Ethan's empire crumbled, investors fleeing, his name synonymous with disgrace. The woman he flaunted at my expense vanished into obscurity. The Marinos scattered under federal pursuit, their power fractured. And me? I started a foundation in my mother's honor, channeling donations from Alexander and others into schools, scholarships, and shelters for women who felt trapped the way I once had. When I stood at the podium at our first fundraiser, Matthew in my arms, Alexander at my side, I realized something profound. My story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about rebirth. I had been erased, humiliated, nearly destroyed. But I came back stronger, for my child, for myself, for every woman who needed to know they weren't powerless. As the applause filled the room, I whispered to Matthew, "One day, you'll know what it cost to get here. But I promise, you'll never doubt your mother's strength." He cooed softly, his tiny fingers wrapping around mine, and for the first time, I knew my story wasn't ending. It was only beginning.